Evening, and welcome back to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 2 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. A place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, and we come to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network and your hometown radio, Classic 1220, streaming around the world on classic1220.ca. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com is the best way. And of course, on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. My guest of this hour, Exonation, is a gentleman that we've had the pleasure of having on the show many times. His name is Bart Sibrel, and in the past we've talked to Bart about his book and video, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, Astronauts Gone Wild. But tonight we're also talking to Bart about his new book that's entitled Aliens from Planet X, Their Origin and Future Appearance. And it's the culmination of filmmaker and investigative journalist Bart Sibrel's decades-long research about the elusive topic of aliens. And I don't think we're talking about the ones from Mexico either, gang. As well as recently discovered possibility of a dangerous rogue planet, Planet X, passing by the Earth in the near future with potentially catastrophic global consequences. Bart's investigation contained herein reveals how our corrupt world leaders may use the passing of Planet X for their long-planned revealing of aliens, which may actually have been interdimensional beings rather than extraterrestrial. Joining me now is Bart Sibrel. And Bart, welcome back to the X Zone.
Well, thank you very much. How are you, Sue?
Yeah, I'll tell you, you're one busy guy. Where do you find the time to do all the work you do, Bart?
I wish I had more time. I'm always perpetually trying to find more time. I need to invent a time machine, except it would take so much time to do it.
Yeah, time is a very valuable commodity these days, isn't it?
The most valuable. You know, you can always make more money, but you can never make more time.
Isn't that the fact? Also, your book, Moon Man, that one is a real eye-opener. And what are the critics saying about Moon Man?
Well, if you go to Sibrel.com, S as in Sam, I-B as in boy, R-E-L, Sibrel.com, there's an image of the book on the homepage. Click on that and you'll read the reviews. I just posted one Amazon review on my website, Sibrel.com, and let me read it to you.
Sure.
It's the first review that I've ever posted. And it's very new. It just came out, and I thought, I should put that in there. Here's what it says.
Okay.
If you still believe that we landed on the moon and our astronauts walked on its surface in 1969 after reading this book, I don't know what to say. Prior to watching Joe Rogan interview Bart Sibrel regarding the Apollo 11 mission, I firmly believed the story. I never questioned its authenticity. Suddenly, the lie became so clearly obvious, and I delved further into this topic. That's why I read this book, and it only further confirmed that the whole Apollo mission was one big hoax. While Mr. Sibrel belabors some points excessively, perhaps that is what's necessary to get the truth to sink in.
Wow. Was that by Buzz Aldrin by any chance?
Well, oddly enough, let me tell you something about that. After the famous, or dare I say infamous, punch incident, about a year went by, and some brothers in my church pointed out a couple of mistakes I did spiritually with that little encounter. Number one, I believe it says in the Old Testament, don't make an oath, or actually it says in the book of James, I think. And then Jesus quotes it. He says, don't take an oath. Maybe oaths were associated with pagan rites, Illuminati. He said, just let your yes be yes and your no be no. So when you take an oath in court or an oath in Congress, Jesus said not to do that. So they pointed out to me I shouldn't have asked these guys to swear on the Bible. I was just kind of imitating all those courtroom dramas I'd seen on TV as a kid. I thought, hey, why not track these guys down? And most of them, of course, wouldn't do it for fear it could be used as a video deposition. And then the second thing The Bible says not to talk to an older man disrespectfully. Now, I didn't wake up that morning and say, hey, can't wait to call Buzz Aldrin a liar, a coward, and a thief. And I'm sure I didn't wake up that morning saying, I can't wait to punch Bart the next time I see him. It just, the heat kind of got
Yeah.
turned up. However, about a year later, after the incident, I wrote him a letter of apology and said, I spoke with you disrespectfully, I provoked you, and I'm sorry. That day, he got the letter. We have a copy of it online. He ordered a copy of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, Buzz Aldrin, Beverly Hills, California. So, it kind of softened his heart. He got the movie, he's seen it. And I get feedback from people all the time. They just now saw this movie, on YouTube. You type in the topic moon landing hoax, you get nothing about it, only a defense, 1,000 defenses why it must be real, which wouldn't be necessary if it were real, right? It should speak for itself. And you type in my movie, you don't get it. You get, all these other films, defending the moon landing. The fact is, today, with 50 years better technology, the farthest NASA can send an astronaut into space is 1,000th the distance to the moon. So what they're really claiming is, for the first time in the entire history of the world, there was greater technology in the past than in the future. When NASA only had, if you combined all the computer power at NASA when they allegedly went to the moon, it had 1/1,000th the capability of a cell phone. And NASA has never kept a schedule in their entire existence, except the most complicated mission of all time. They were ahead of schedule. So they're saying they went 1,000 times farther into space with untried equipment that was 1/1,000th the capable of a cell phone, and then today they can only go 1,000th as far, despite 5 decades better rockets and computers. You see, that should speak for itself. So people are sending me emails. They just now saw A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, which is, you can view it for free on the homepage of Sibrel.com. In fact, the book Moon Man has 17 interactive video links. See those for free at Sibrel.com. You read a chapter. It says, look, if you want to understand the next chapter, stop. Go to link 1, link 2, link 3.
Right.
The new book you spoke of has, I think, 29 links. And people are blown away. We found classified footage of them faking being halfway to the moon right in front of your eyes from Earth orbit. And, I've seen people sitting in the back of a theater watching my movie, and there's just gasps and when they see it. And
wait a sec, Bart. That sounded like the porno movies you used to make.
No, I never made those. But, I appreciate the bad joke. But in any case, but I'm sure they would be very good if I made them.
I'm sure they would be. I'm sure they would be. I remember
they
when
would be the highest quality of moral films.
Bart, I remember when you were kind enough to send me a copy many, many years ago when it first came out, and I played it at the station, and the news director was there, and he's saying, no, wait a minute, come on, no, what did he just say? Hold on, Rob, roll that back, and it was the half shot, to the shot that they did halfway to the moon, and he's watching it. And he says, well, I used to be a believer, not anymore.
Yeah, and this was before the guy, that review that you asked about. That was before he even watched the movie.
Yeah.
He watched my 3-hour conversation with Joe Rogan, and it's like, well, this is just the way that it is. They can't go 1,000th the distance today, so how could they go 1,000 times farther with 1960s equipment? You see?
Exactly.
The problem is it's a positive lie. I've said it before, whoever killed Kennedy, you can change the hat on who did it and why, but he's still dead. It's still a tragedy.
Right.
Or 9/11, you can change who did it and why. It's still a tragedy. This is different. This is a positive lie. I'm come along, and I'm trying to take that sweet candy away from people and give them a plate of manure, and they are defending the candy. It's like someone who's molested by a priest defending the priest. And it's like they have no idea what they're doing. I did Glenn Beck's show, And the only reason they had me on is because a few days earlier, the former director of the Russian space agency said the moon landings are fake. So they had to have really quick put that fire out. He has me on for
Mhm.
15 minutes audio only, followed by an hour of video of an Apollo astronaut allegedly, claiming he goes to the moon.
Mhm.
A guy who claims to be a Christian, right? Charles Duke has the audacity to do that. And because he says that, he must be telling the truth. That's like saying, well, because someone says they're a pastor, they must be a good person. Someone says they're a priest, that must mean they're honest. Hey, I'm a Christian, so believe me. And then Glenn Beck is like, well, I know America has gotten bad, but at least we went to the moon. And he doesn't realize he is kissing the butt of a guy who is accomplished to multiple homicides. Because in my book, I disclose things that are not in the film because people asked that I release that after they were dead, including the murder of Apollo astronauts who would not cooperate, who their own relatives told me that they were murdered by the CIA. You see, so that guy faking the moon mission contributed to the death of innocent people, and Glenn Beck is kissing his butt and making fun of me for revealing the truth. And that's an anti-deep state person. You see, an anti-deep state person is defending the deep state, and he doesn't even know it because of the glorious, great, wonderful, look, we put a man on the moon. And I remember, Rob, back maybe 30 years ago, there was a cover of Time magazine, and the title said, The Generation That Forgot God. And there was a cross. And up and down the cross, and to the left and right of the cross, were little images. There was like the atomic bomb. At the bottom was that picture of Nixon. You know what the top picture was? A man on the moon. The Tower of Babel never finished. The Titanic, the ship that God himself could not sink, never made one voyage. And Nixon, when he knew they weren't there, called putting a man on the moon second in greatness only to God making the universe.
Bart Sibrel, please stand by. We've got to take our first break in Exonation. If you'd like to find out more about Bart and the great work he's done and turned many people who were non-believers into believers that America did not go to the moon, visit www.sibrel.com. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the Exxon Bart, and I return after this break. Don't go away. Obviously, Chad and Jeremy have not seen Astronauts Gone Wild or know anything about our guest this hour, Bart Sibrel, because they would know that not everyone's gone to the moon. Bart Sibrel is my guest. Sibrel.com is his website. Bart, before we get on talking about your new book, Aliens from Planet X, the origin and future appearance of people also believe in Planet X, and I can't figure that out for the life of me, but we'll talk to you about that in a sec. With today's technology, Bart, do you think that they would able to perpetrate a mission, whether it's to the moon or Mars now?
No. If they could, they would. At the South Pole, it's 100 degrees below zero, 100 mile per hour winds, and there are bases there. Why? Because it's humanly possible. Barely. If they could go to the moon on the first attempt with 1 millionth the computing power of a cell phone, we would have been on Mars 10 years later. We'd be in another solar system by now, and there'd be bases all over the moon. There aren't bases on the moon because it can't be done. One of the free clips at Sibrel.com is NASA's own engineer saying that, unbeknownst to most people, there's a huge radiation field that's 30,000 miles thick that surrounds the Earth starting at 1,000 miles. Every manned mission has been well below that except going to the moon. He calls the radiation lethal, and then he says the technology for an astronaut to go through it to the moon and back has not been invented yet.
And you're talking about the Van Allen belt, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And so they didn't go to the moon, and they can't go to the moon. I suspect, seeing how they've already postponed, quote, returning to the moon 10 times. 10 times they postponed it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I suspect by the time the next round comes along, there'll be some global catastrophe, which we'll talk about. Comet, asteroid, something like that, and then no one's going to care who shot Kennedy or whether they went to the moon or not. The fact is, if they could go to the moon, there would be bases there just like at the South Pole. There aren't bases there because they can't go.
Bart, tell us about your new book, Aliens from Planet X, Their Origin and Future Appearance.
Well, von Braun, the guy who was the chief architect of the rocket and the faking thereof, he wrote a book and we got a hold of it. You have to understand, a funny thing happened on the way to the moon, and Astronauts Gone Wild cost about $1 million to produce. I didn't happen to have $1 million in the bank at the time. So a gentleman who builds rockets for NASA, who knows the moon missions are fake, gave me the money to expose it, wants to remain anonymous, so his stock doesn't go down. Well, we uncovered this footage that proves that they never left Earth orbit, and what a surprise, 50 years later, they still can't leave Earth orbit. So we have that investment, and we found documentation from von Braun, who said in his own writings, the idea of going to the moon and back in one rocket is impossible. He said it would take a minimum of 3 rockets, and even those 3 rockets would be 10 times the weight of the Queen Mary, taller than the Empire State Building, and each of the 3 would weigh 800,000 tons. The Saturn V moon rocket was only 2,500 tons, not 800,000 tons, a difference of 30,000% times 3. So they can't go. He said in his own writing that the Saturn V rocket could only do Earth orbit. That's why they destroyed all the original publications, all the original blueprints, all the original videotape, which they would never do if they went, but it's exactly what they do if they would perpetrating a fraud. Well, that man said before he died that the government was planning in the future, decades into the future, of faking an alien invasion. I think the guy who faked the last historic worldwide event, putting a man on the moon, which was fake, I think we should listen to him if he says the government's going to fake the next worldwide historic event. And let me just insert one of the most important things in Moon Man is that we came upon a man who saw them film the fake moon landing at Cannon Air Force Base, June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 1968. And not just a random employee, the chief of security of the most secure Air Force base. I had to pull out footage that I filmed myself of Bill Casey, who worked for NASA for 6 years, who said it was fake. And he said the whole faking was supervised by the United States Air Force. Well, every branch of the military has their Special Ops Intelligence Division, and the Special Ops Intelligence Division of the United States Air Force is at Cannon Air Force Base, where the chief of security thereof said before he died that not only did they film the fake moon landing there, that he murdered a coworker to cover it up who was going to squeal. So when we have another deathbed confession of von Braun warning that the government's going to fake an alien invasion, I said I need to look into that. So my opinion about the moon landing or pandemics or viruses or medicines allegedly to benefit the person thereof is simply the expert's opinion that I researched, talked to. For example, I don't know who shot Kennedy. I wasn't born yet. But if Robert Kennedy Jr., who has more access to the JFK files, says 100% certainty he was killed by the CIA because he was going to shut down the CIA, I take his opinion as truth. Mm-hmm. If the former vice president of a certain pharmaceutical company says, number one, there's no reason to take it, they're faking the reason, and number two, it's not good for you, then that becomes my opinion. So in looking up aliens, I'm like, well, who are the top 2 researchers? Well, there's one Frenchman, Jacques Vallée, one American, Alan Hynek. And he and the other researched aliens for 4 decades. They did UFO abduction interviews. They did the most extensive research into UFOs. And the interesting thing is, they're in two different countries, and they came to the exact same conclusion after 40 years of research. Number one, UFOs are real. Number two, they're not from outer space. They're from Earth. And number three, they're demonic. That's pretty interesting for people who wanted to believe in the League of Planets and all that stuff, which is, programming the American people. Everyone wants us to believe in UFOs. The government wants us to believe in UFOs. And they, quote, leak out to make it tantalizing. We're leaking this out so that you'll believe in it. Trust me, there was only one person in 50 years who admitted he participated in the moon landing fraud. If UFOs were real and they wanted to keep it a secret, there would be zero people talking about it. But there's leak and leak and leak and leak. In fact, the last time I was in a hotel, I think I was doing one of these interviews, flipping through HBO, 3 of the 10 movies, a third, were about aliens from outer space. And so my book at Sibrel.com, which is in print, Kindle, or audio, which I read myself, has 29 interactive video links. The very first one is a scientist saying, look, we've pointed radio telescopes in every direction of the universe for 50 years. Mm-hmm. If there's an intelligent life out there, we would pick up a radio signal, and they've picked up 0 in 50 years because no one is there. We are alone. What did they say? UFOs are real, but they're not from outer space. They're from Earth. And what a surprise. The government wants us to believe the exact opposite of the truth. Aliens are everywhere. Planets are inhabitable everywhere. Well, not according to scientists. They say life on Earth should not even exist. Life being here and everything falling into place, from the planets to the galaxy to DNA, is like winning the Powerball lottery 20 times in a row. It cannot happen by accident. It's by design. We are made by a higher power. Now, in the next segment, we'll go into how this show called Ancient Aliens is trying to trick people into believing, okay, that's true, but we were made by aliens instead of God. One of the reasons they had to come up with that show is because there was a recent DNA analysis of every nationality on the planet, from Eskimos, Swedes, Africans, Europeans, and with DNA technology, they were able to trace mankind's ancestry back in time. And they said, absolutely scientifically proven, all humans who ever lived, are alive, or will ever live came from one woman, just like the Bible says. No evolution, suddenly appeared. We don't know how, we don't know why. That's a fact, but the world leaders don't want us to believe in God, which would lead to repenting of evil, which they want to promote. So they say, okay, it's true. All mankind came from one woman, no evolution, no one before her suddenly appeared, but no God. We were put there by aliens. They never ask in 3.5 years of this series, okay, well, if we were made by aliens, then who made the aliens?
Right.
And when you find out who aliens really are, which we can talk about in the next segment, then you realize the third point that those UFO researchers made, demonic, falls into place.
Well, what it does, actually, in my opinion, Bart, your book that is it proves the Bible is right.
Yeah, how about that? The more they dig up ancient bones and ruins, the more the Bible proves to be true. In fact, the guy who made, I think it's the filmmaker who made the Titanic or something like that.
James Cameron?
What's his name?
James Cameron.
Yeah, James Cameron. He did this huge film to say, okay, according to archaeological records, all of the 10 plagues, every single one of them, from frogs to blood, river of blood to the death of the firstborn, they all happened. They're here in the hieroglyphics, but it's not God. They all were coincidences. That's what he says. He says the reason why the firstborn son died is because the firstborn son would sleep closest to the floor, and there was a toxic cloud that came in, and that's why it killed them. No God. You see, it's amazing the links they go to intellectually to disprove science, which says there is design. There's no way DNA can happen without design. It's impossible. So that means you can call it God, a higher power, the computer that controls the universe, whatever. It's not random. It can't happen by accident. My car that I'm looking out through the window, it didn't make itself, right? I can open the hood and I can bring my golden retriever over there and say, this is the alternator, this is the starter, this is this. I can spend her whole life trying to explain a spark plug and she won't understand 1% of it. Does that mean there's no design in that car? You see, people are so arrogant, they think, well, if I can't comprehend an eternal being, it must not be true.
Bart, stand by. We've got to take our break at the bottom. Exonation, Bart Sibrel is my special guest this hour. Sibrel.com is his website. And we're going to be talking about his new book this hour, Aliens from Planet X, Their Origin and Future Appearance. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone, and we're coming to you on the X Zone Broadcast Network and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, CFAJ in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. Bart Sibrel is my special guest. Sibrel.com is his website. And please continue, Bart.
Well, okay, let's summarize. The top 2 UFO researchers independently concluded after a combined 8 decades of research, number 1, UFOs are real. Number 2, they're not from outer space, they're from Earth. Number 3, they're demonic. The first link at Sibrel.com, at the top it says Aliens from Planet X links. They're from the book. You can watch them for free. Is the radio scientist saying there's not a single radio signal in 50 years coming from everywhere in the universe. We are alone.
But Bart, Bart, I hate to interrupt you, but is it possible that we're looking for the wrong signal? Is it possible that other life out there may in fact be there, and they may in fact be transmitting in a type of technology that we don't even know exists yet?
Well, that we would still detect it unless they originally, when their civilization advanced, presumably like ours, they went with underground cables instead of transmitting things over their oceans. But I doubt that's the case. That if we want to talk about the Bible, technically there's a scripture in the Bible that says we're alone. Okay, Revelation 21:3 says when God makes the new heaven and the new earth, God will personally dwell with humans. Now, it says 4 times in the Bible that God does not show partiality. So if there's life on other worlds and he dwells with us instead of them, he's showing partiality. Gotcha. The only way he can dwell with us and not show partiality is if we're it. Again, the government wants us to believe the exact opposite. The truth is we're alone. They want us to believe the opposite. The truth is we did not go to the moon. They want us to believe the opposite. And one of the links, link number 5 and 6, we show that these organizations that run the world, including the World Economic Forum, have hidden in plain sight, and it's crystal clear. You don't notice it unless someone points it out to you, but there's 666 in these logos. And then we have a video of all the world leaders doing the hand sign of the devil in photographs. What does that mean? Well, one of the links we have is of an article of a young girl who, part of her high school research, went through 500,000 genealogical names of presidents of the United States. Now, this was done about 10 years ago or so, but at that time, she found out that every single United States president, except for one, is of the same bloodline. And then, back to the Bible, Genesis 3:15 says, after the fall of man, God speaking to Lucifer, I will put war between you and your seed and the seed of Adam. What does seed mean in the Bible? Future offspring, 2 bloodlines. And then Genesis 6 says that the angels, sons of God, intermarried with the daughters of men, and the result was a deformed race of hybrids that were giants, right?
And you're talking about the
And
Nephilim here.
that's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
And so the interesting thing is when people are abducted by, quote, aliens,
Mm-hmm.
they harvest their sperm and eggs. Now, Leviticus 19:19 says, do not crossbreed species. Do not make GMOs. You see? What corporations do GMOs? The evil corporations. What people promote GMOs? The evil people. Okay, so let's take a look at an example. When you disobey, when you take a horse and a donkey to make a mule, it's defective. Just like when you took a human and an angel and a Nephilim was produced, it's defective. It has giantism. It has 6 fingers and 6 toes and 2 rows of teeth instead of 1, and mentally unstable. When you take a horse and a donkey to make a mule, the mule is sterile. GMOs were introduced about 50 years ago, and since then, fertility rates have dropped by 65%. Now, that means the Nephilim are sterile. So if they want to continue to produce their own kind, they have to abduct people and harvest their sperm and their eggs. Well, what about these little gray men? They're short. Well, if they've been around for thousands of years and we're just now experimenting with test tube babies,
Mm-hmm.
then I say the little gray men are their biological worker bees. After all, a biological worker bee is much better than a robot. Much better. Robot really can't adapt. It has physical limitations. It can't fix itself. It can't heal itself. You know, if you cut yourself, it heals on its own. And then they make the little gray men weak, short in stature, frail, and potentially heartless, right? There are people on their little operating table screaming and screaming. They don't seem to care. So maybe they're engineered for that. You know, husbandry, you can take, you know, these wild foxes and breed a group that's vicious and breed a group that's tame. You see? And so if, let's just say we went to the moon in 1969, let's just say we
Right.
did that.
Okay.
Imagine the technology we would have 6,000 years later. So if 6,000 years ago these aliens were around, imagine the technology we would have now. That's UFOs, the UFOs that come out of the water. What a perfect place to hide. 3/4 of the world is water, and a vehicle that can go up in the air and down under the water, right? So remember they said, the top 2 UFO researchers, that UFOs are real, but they're not from outer space. They're from Earth, and they're demonic. So back to that alien program and back to the Bible. The Bible says, I think it's in Isaiah 14, that Satan wanted to ascend to the throne of God and kick God off. Okay? So if this program, Ancient Aliens, is saying that aliens made mankind and aliens are really fallen angels led by Lucifer, then what they're really saying is mankind was made by Lucifer instead of God. Do you see that?
Yeah.
And that's why there's 666 and the CERN logo and the Google logo and the World Economic logo. And while the Nephilim blood leaders, you see, are doing the devil sign. Vote for Republican Nephilim or Democratic Nephilim. We want the most popular person to win. It doesn't matter. Do you think it's a coincidence that all but one of the U.S. presidents are of the same bloodline? Do you think it's a coincidence that Genesis 3:15 says there's a war between 2 bloodlines, the Luciferian bloodline and the Adam bloodline? It's right there in the Bible. They created a hybrid species, and it says the flood was to destroy them, but somehow they survived because their fallen angels maybe scooped them up in their UFOs and protected them, because they were there afterwards, and I think they're still here today. They bred out the giantism, and they now walk among us, and that's what aliens really are.
So, are we talking about interdimensional travel here? Are we talking? What are we talking, Bart? If there's satanic connection as told by in the Bible.
Well, let's go back to the Bible.
Okay.
It says that after Jesus was resurrected and
Mm-hmm.
before he ascended, there would be a room with all the doors closed and he would suddenly appear. I would call that interdimensional. But he also ate fish and ate honey, so he's physical. They touched him. They put his someone's finger into his wounds,
Yeah.
and then he disappeared. So I say fallen angels can likely do the same thing. Back to CERN. I'm looking right now. Go to Sibrel.com. Click on, the top button that says Aliens, Planet X links. Go to link 5, and you can see just the icon, CERN, that they want to get down to the smallest particle to open the other dimension. 666, clear as crystal in their logo. What's in the other dimension? The Bible says in Revelation, that's where the fallen angels are in dungeons and they will come out for a time. You see? And apparently that's what's going on. And there's a distinction between a fallen angel and a demon. Angels can be touched. They're very similar to us, except they're tall. Even when people have visions of good angels rescuing them, lifting a car off of them,
Mm-hmm.
they're tall, right?
Yeah.
And so fallen angels are tall and good angels are tall, right? And so they have this interdimensional capability of like appearing here and going there. And that's the demonic entity that is associated with this. And so the world leaders want us to believe the opposite. They're from outer space, but even science proves there is no transmission. The top two experts say they're not from outer space, they're from Earth. And it's this bloodline that's right there in the Bible. I will put war between the offspring of Lucifer, fallen angel Nephilim, and the offspring of Adam. What is the war going on that all the alternative media people know about? Us against the deep state, us against the World Economic Forum. You see that? And it just boggles the mind. I mean, I remember, Rob, I saw, what was that movie? The Truman Show. Okay, I'm a young hotshot filmmaker. I work 2 days or 3 days a week. So on a Tuesday at noon, I go in and see the movie. I think I'm the only one there. The movie goes along about 20 minutes, and I'm like, this is dumb. This is the most illogical, unbelievable, stupid film I've ever seen. I walked out. Now I watch the film once a year and cry every time and love it. But the point is, if someone told me, hey, we're going to write a script about a country on Earth that everyone wants to immigrate to, they kill their own people, they start wars, they smile and say they're heroes, they fake moon landings, they fake illnesses, they trick people into taking a medicine for an illness they don't have that's going to do them harm, I would say pass. Give me something more realistic, and it becomes even more bizarre. Like you said at the beginning, the lies become truth,
Yeah.
the truth becomes lies, stranger than fiction. And now, when you realize, I mean, to me, it's very hard to believe that someone would actually worship Lucifer. I find that hard to believe. But one of the clips here at Sibrel.com is a Vatican Easter service, and Easter is pagan. Come on, people, eggs and bunnies, fertility, goddess. And in Latin, they're saying, we praise thee, Lucifer. Lucifer, the father of Jesus. They're saying that in Latin. We have a clip of it.
Unreal.
These people actually worship Lucifer, right? The World Economic Forum spokes guy, he says, don't obey the Bible, don't obey Jesus. He never said there was no God. Never said there was no Lucifer. You see?
Yeah.
And you may know that video, some guy in his 70s, maybe with one too many drinks or senility, comes out, a guy like Alex Jones interviews him, do you guys really worship Lucifer? And he says, sure we do. But you got it all wrong. Lucifer is the good guy, and Jesus, he disrespected Lucifer. God's not being fair here.
Bart,
You know
stand
what I
by.
mean?
We've got to take our final break. Bart Sibrel, thanks very much for joining us. Always a great pleasure talking to you, Bart, and congratulations on all the work you do. Exonation, Bart and I will be back as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And we're coming to you tonight on the X Zone Broadcast Network and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, CFAJ in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. McCoy. Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. And you're listening to us on the X Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, streaming around the world on classic1220.ca. Bart Sibrel is my special guest at this hour. And if you'd like to find Bart online, it's very simple. Sibrel.com. Again, Bart, congratulations on your newest book, and thanks very much for sharing this hour with us.
Oh, no problem. And I realized now we need to talk about the second half of the book, which is Planet X, and how Planet X and aliens are connected potentially. So back in I guess it must have been the late 80s, around 89, I talked to a manager, executive type person at NASA who said, yes, the moon landings are fake. And then he said, that's old news. If you're going to make a movie, you should make a movie about Planet X. I'm like, well, what is Planet X? He's like, well, Planet X is a rogue planet. Well, what's a rogue planet? We'll go into. And he says it should, make a pass near Earth that could disrupt global climate in the most, dramatic way that's ever happened in the history of the world sometime in the 21st century. Well, I'm like, I'm not concerned about 30 years from now or 40 years from now, whatever. I went ahead and made the moon film. However, it seems like we're at that stage now. So I spent 10 or 20 years since he, told me about that, looking into what Planet X is. Again, like with, this little event for the last 3 years, or who shot JFK, I just consult the experts. I tracked down people who knew the most about it and kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together as best as I could. And that's what the second half of the new book at Sibrel.com is all about. Now, what is Planet X? One of the best links of the 29 links here that you can see for free at Sibrel.com, and I'm trying to find which link it is. It's a Weather Channel special about rogue planets. Well, what is a rogue planet? Well, the Illuminati kind of leaks things out, and so over the last 10 years, there have been numerous scientific articles about rogue planets. A rogue planet is a planet that, instead of orbiting a star, just free floats like a shotgun blast through the universe. The latest statistical analysis says there are more rogue planets in the universe than one orbiting stars. And they say, for us, there's at least 2 to 8 rogue planets in their relative vicinity of our solar system. So this Weather Channel special, which is one of the links for the book at Sibrel.com, they took it down off the website. I put it back up there as one of these links, and it talks about rogue planets. And they estimate that the average rogue planet is about 10 times larger than the Earth. And if it happens to go between Jupiter and Saturn at an average distance of 750, 750 million miles away, okay, not even near the Earth, it would pull Jupiter further away from the sun, which would pull the Earth further away from the sun, and cause so much upheaval that it would just be unlike anything in the history of the world. Back to the Bible. Jesus said, in the last days, men's hearts will melt with fear for the signs in the heavens and the things coming upon the whole earth. Now, I've read the Bible many times from cover to cover, and the last time I read the book of Isaiah, I already knew that Revelation is about the last days, and Daniel is about the last days, but Isaiah is about the last days. It says the day of the Lord over and over and over again. That's the last days. I think it's Isaiah 13:13. It says one of the tribulations will be, quote, the earth will be moved out of its place. Well, guess what? It happened before in the past. One of the greatest events in human history is not taught in school, which is prior to 705 BC, all of the advanced astronomical civilizations of the world that had, great calendars and knew when eclipses were coming, which would include the Mayans, the Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Hebrews, and the Chinese. They all had the calendar of the Earth's year at 360 days. That's why there's 360 degrees on a compass. And that's the way it was for thousands of years until 705 BC, where, not so coincidentally, in the book, I believe, of Second Kings, it says that a sign was given of the sundial going backwards. Well, it wasn't a circular sundial, which would mean the Earth would have to stop rotating, go in the other direction, stop and go back. It was steps, a shadow on a step for an hour. So the Earth tilted. So in 705 BC, that's when Second Kings happened, and something different happened with our Earth and Sun relationship. Because immediately after 705 BC, all of the calendars of the world changed from a 360-day year to a 365 and a quarter day year. Now, how can that happen? How can the Earth's year suddenly go from 360 days to 365 and a quarter? Well, it means that the Earth was pulled slightly further away from the sun, and the greater distance took another 5 and a quarter days to go around. So what could pull the Earth further away from the sun? Something much larger than the Earth. Now, some say Planet X comes by every 3,600 years. I think that's an error. They mistranslated the 0. It's more often. It's probably around 360 years, but most of the time it's on the opposite side of the sun. We don't know about it. But the times that it's closer, like in 1045 AD, the Chinese called it a red dragon in the sky. When Jesus was on the cross, it said that there was a total eclipse on the whole Earth for 3 hours. That means Planet X is 7 times bigger than the Earth, and if you do the exact math, brace yourself, it's 6.66 times larger than the Earth. Now let's go to the symbolism. In Genesis, God says the planets and the stars are for signs and seasons and are symbolic. Well, what do we call Planet X? A rogue planet, a rebellious planet. What is the devil? A rogue angel, a rebellious angel. Well, get this, the most powerful telescope in the world is owned by the Jesuit CIA sect of the Vatican. It's in Arizona. It's not only an infrared telescope, which is the only kind that can view Planet X because it's completely black. An optical telescope can't see it. It's also binocular, 3D. The name of the telescope is called the Lucifer telescope. And a Jesuit on his deathbed who disavowed the order said that that telescope is tracking an object that's going to play a significant part in world history in the last days. It's my belief it's tracking planet Lucifer, Planet X. It says in the book of John, the devil comes to kill and steal and destroy. It's a symbolic symbol of the Luciferian battle. It was what was darkening the earth during Jesus on the cross. It is what is going to be the tribulation. And get this, right? We have planet Lucifer, right? From the Luciferian telescope. That means that prior to 705 BC, with the earth having 360-day year, that means we had 12 months, 12 tribes of Israel, and every month was exactly 30 days. Now think if that was the case today. You have 12 months, 12 tribes of Israel, and every month is exactly 30 days. How could you argue against divine creation? You couldn't. So planet Lucifer destroyed the testimony of God's creation. And I believe it may very well be the cause of the tribulation spoken about in the book of Revelation. Because when I talk to secular people about rogue planets and what would happen if it came near the earth, it's exactly what the book of Revelation says. Meteor storms, earthquakes. the shaking of the earth, the tossing and turning of the seas. Jesus says it will be the tossing and turning of the seas that will cause man's hearts to melt with fear. The moon, right, which would be 1/30th the size of Planet X, causes the waves to go in and out 20 feet a day.
Mm-hmm.
This would be 30 times bigger than the moon, which would cause the tossing and the turning of the seas.
Wow.
So the final connection is, okay, aliens are really from Earth. They want us to think they're from outer space. So if Planet X comes by like perfect misdirection, they will claim the aliens came from Planet X that are using it as their spaceship. And that's why they're suddenly appearing now. They came from Planet X. Of course, a lie. You see how the two can be connected.
Right. If God knows all this, why doesn't he intervene?
Well, that's the age-old question. If there's a God, why do bad things happen? I'll tell you my opinion. Let's say you have a child. He's reaching for the hot burner on the stove. You push the hand away. Say no. He reaches again. You push the hand away. He reaches a third time. You slap the hand hard.
Right.
He reaches a fourth time. Maybe you got to let him burn his hand. You know, it's like when your son or daughter graduates from college, you give them the keys to the car. Drive responsibly. Don't drink and drive. And if they don't, it's their own fault. God has seen it from a, eternal perspective. He gave us the earth. The earth is full of corruption and pollution and sin and murder and death because of us, not because of God.
Bart Sibrel is our guest. The name of his new book, it's available on just by going to Bart Sibrel. His website is sibrel.com. Sibrel.com. As always, Bart, great having you with us. I want to thank you so much for your time. We've run out of time. I wish we had more time to share with you tonight, but we'll have to get you certainly back on the show in the near future to tell us more. And I'd like to get into a conversation with you about your own religious affiliations and why you thought that the Bible and all that's going on in today's world, which I agree with you, by the way. I agree with you, Bart. Why this is all happening and what was your aha moment. So until then, Bart, take care of yourself, my friend, and Exo Nation. Sibrel.com is the website. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, from the studios of the X-Zone Broadcast Network on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, streamed around the world on classic1220.ca.